Hey guys, I suck but I stream here. Welcome to episode 2 of Off Grid Minis. So, last week I spent a couple of hours putting together 34 minutes, I guess it would have been about 4 hours, putting together all 10 of these little black guys. So this week I'm going to start painting, starting with this little guy, the WAAAGH drummer. I figured it'd be a fun little place to start. So, a few things you're gonna need to start off with. Definitely, your painting guide. You can't see it from there, but along the sides, you have little guides telling you what paints to use in what areas. And of course, those are only the main areas. They don't have the finer points like the weapons or the handle of it or like his teeth, his tongue. Nope, not necessarily on this guy, but on other models. They don't have what you'd need for his drumstick or his drum or the bass. Just fine little details like that. So you just have to improvise. Use your prior knowledge, what you've learned along the way. So, of course, you also need your paints. I have my makeshift little palette here that I've made from just the tray that a few of my paints have come in. I got a couple sets to get started off with. That would have been about a month and a half ago now. Of course, you also need your brushes. I've got a few here. 2 of the Citadel starter brushes. One came in an older set, so it has a bit of a wider tip than the other. I like the finer one for small details. You also have your layer brush. It's for highlighting and getting into recesses. Also very fine, but just for a different style than the starter brushes are for. Then you also have your base brush. Of course, that's just for doing your main base coats like the yellow and blue areas on this guy. And I also have a larger one I like to use just for doing the larger areas of base coat. And then there's just a couple other brushes that I may use here and there, say for dry brushing, other things like that. You'll also want a cloth. Well, you might not necessarily want one. They don't really say to use one. I'm not sure if it's a taboo or not. I like to use one just to help whisk the water away or whisk the water out of the brushes after you're done rinsing the brush. And of course, you also need your cup of rinsing water. So I'll break down the paints I'm going to be using a little bit, and ones I'm going to be using for smaller details I'll kind of talk about as the video's going through. So for yellow areas, I have Averland Sunset. Unfortunately, I don't have all the paints that they recommend, so I'm kind of gonna be going with my own scheme. I'm gonna be following those as closely as possible, but I don't have the correct shades or layers, or not all of them. So it's not gonna look exactly like the pictures. It won't be complete in my mind. But again, the Averland Sunset for the yellow areas, and then the black blue areas. You start off with Stegadon scale green. For his flesh, there's not much on this little guy. I'll leave him up here for you guys to see. I have WAAAGH flesh, spelled WAAAGH exclamation point. Excuse me, sorry. There's a couple little areas I'll be using lead belcher. That's a silver color. Yeah, smaller details. I have Rhinox hide. It's a deeper brown, or deep brown. I have for the skull on his drumstick and also the drum head, I'm going to be basing with Rakarth flesh. And Mornfang brown I have just for his drumstick, and possibly a couple other small details, as well as Retributor armor, which is the color on this guy, only it's been deepened a little bit with Reichland flesh, which is a shade. Reichland flesh, sorry. And I have Null Oil, Reichland Flesh, and Seraphim Sepia as my shades. I will talk about when I'm using them a little bit in the video. I have Administratum Grey as a layer. I'm going to use that on his horns. On top of, I think I'm going to use Rhinox hide there. Then I have Necron Compound and Thunderhawk Blue. They are both dry paints, and they will be used for highlighting as well, just like the layer Administratum Grey. Just they go on a little differently. They have a different brush style than the layering. And finally, for the base, I am using Armageddon Dust. It is a textured paint. It creates kind of a bumpy, almost sandy, hard surface. So that would make it like a desert floor. Like desert ground that he's walking on. So, I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you enjoyed last episode as well. Well, why else would you be here if you didn't? But, without further ado, let's get painting. You want to always remember to mix your base paints in with a little water, just to make them a little thinner so they don't fill in details as much. As well, to make it so... sorry guys. To make it so they don't dry in your brush as quickly. So you want to mix it about 50-50. For some base paints, if I'm using less of it, I won't mix it with water, just because it's not going to be open for that long, as well as I'm not going to be using that much of it, and there's not as many details that are going to get blinded out. Here I'm using the Seraphim Sepia on the areas I used the WAAAGH flesh on. That's the lighter grayish areas. And that's going to give it more of a weathered, darker look. Here I'm using Drakenhof Nightshade. It's a bluer shade paint. Just on the golden areas. I'm using Reichland Flesh Shade here, just trying to get it in the creases to give the yellow armor more of that rusted look. So I'm trying to be very careful not to get it all over the model, because it will change the shade of the yellow as well. So I'm just trying to get it around the bolts and into the creases. And lastly, for the shades, I am using Nuln Oil, and that is going to darken up the blues and browns and just give everything a little more depth as well. So for this part, I'm trying to dry brush the blue areas with this Thunderhawk Blue. It's kind of a lighter shade, and it's going to give highlights to the edges. So it'll make it pop more, make it seem like there's light shining on it. And then for the silver areas, I will be using Necron Compound. And that is basically it for the dry brushing at the moment. Those are all I have. So enjoy the rest of the video. We are almost done. Here I'm just using Armageddon dust to cover up the base of the model. This is the final step besides painting the rim, and this just adds a nice textured base that makes it seem like he's in a desert or some kind of Armageddon dunes. So that concludes episode 2. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me paint. We went from one of these black figures that doesn't have any color to it, it's just primed and built, to this guy here. It's probably going to take a few seconds to focus in, but I didn't quite get all the effects I wanted. it still looks great, in my opinion, just not how I would have liked. So I will get better with time. Hopefully, the next one, or they'll just keep getting better as I go on. And I'll also get all the paints I need. All the recommended paints. Because using what I've got, I'm just not able to bring out the full effect that I'm wanting. With my abilities as well. So, now we have... First off, a couple things I did after the video ended. I went and painted the rim of the base once the texture paint was dry. Hopefully you can see it now. It's got a bit of a gritty texture to it, and it's a sandy tan color. And I also just went in and did a couple little touch-ups and shading that I had missed during the video. So just a yellow spot here, and I also put the Seraphim Sepia over all of the yellow, just kind of balance out the areas where I'd put too much of the red Reichland Flesh shade. And I found it kind of darkens the yellow less than the Reichland Flesh shade, so until I have the yellow shade that they suggest, the Cassandora yellow, I will be using the Seraphim Sepia on the next guys. But now to decide which model we will be painting next for episode 3. So on the base of each of these guys in front of me, I have painted a number. They go up to 16, and I have a D20 dice I'm going to roll. So obviously there's more numbers on the D20 than there are models ready to paint. So on a roll of 17, I'll just go with the next lowest number available, which right now would be 16. On a roll of 18, I'm going to... you know what? For now, I'm just going to re-roll on anything above 16, and in the future I will provide various rules for the other rolls above 16. So, let's figure out which model we're going to be painting next. That is an 18, so we'll re-roll. A 16, so number 16, what is that? That is, ooh, this guy here. That is a good one. That, 1 second. The Brute with the Gorchapa. So that's going to be a pretty fun one to paint. That is that guy right there. With the huge two-handed blade. So that should be a lot of fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching so far, and I'm hoping to progress a lot in the future, and you guys will be right along for the ride with that. So, thanks for joining in. I'll see you next week to paint the Brute with the Gorchapa. Enjoy your week. Thanks for stopping in, and as always, stay classy. This is I Suck But I Stream, signing off.